Hello, 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 my Hope More family. This is Hope Dims, your hostess of this show, and we have been in the month of October as Halloween is around the corner, not looking at the fictional things that scare us in life, but literally the things near and dear to us in our homes and our relationship that can scare you half to death. Our first series of Stocktober, we dealt with sexual violence and our desire to stop sexual violence. And then the second week, we dealt with domestic violence. Those members of your family in the same household, whether they're intimate partners or mother to child, child to sibling, to another sibling, or to someone in your family who's older. And today we're dealing with dating violence. And even though dating violence can take place in a myriad of ages, we're going to be focusing on teens and young adults when it comes to dating violence. And the reason why I wanted to deal with teens and young adults is because a victimized teen often becomes a victimized adult. And when we're dealing with teenagers, there is just something that's a little bit different when it comes to their molding, right, of what is acceptable and what's healthy in a relationship than what's not. And by the time you become an adult, a lot of that becomes hardwired. So if we can look out for our young people while they're still learning and figuring out, then we'll be doing them a solid. So before I begin on our third episode of Stoptober, I want to just remind you all to like and share on Facebook, and also click thumbs up or share on and click the bell and put subscribe on the YouTube channel. We really appreciate that. Every time you do it, it allows me to know that people are watching. I'm actually getting on my cell phone right now. And going in. I don't know why someone's calling me, knowing that I have a show. But we're going to make sure that I'm sharing on my page. Share with your group. Listen back. If you're watching on replay, this is very helpful. I think it will be for parents to consider, people that may have young people in their lives, to consider things to look out for, because the truth of it is the world is so different now. Kids have a different expectation when it comes to understanding what love is and what love is not. So we all need help, right? We all need help. So, all righty then. So I want you guys to definitely come on, click, and share. Ooh. All right. So, goodness, you know what? We're going to start off, and there's a very short video that I think will help sort of set the mood as we talk about stopping dating violence, in this month, as we look at different things that really we should stop in our homes and lives. And there's a quick video that I would love for you guys to watch, so that will sort of put us all on the same page. And what I love is that this video was done by young people for young people, but it's only a few minutes, and it was one of the shorter ones I could find. All right. Because at first I was going to start off with things like Chris Brown and Rihanna, but sometimes that just seems so far, few and far between, right? You think about the glamorous life and the pressures of Hollywood, but what I think people would be very surprised to know is that 1 out of every 3 teenagers in high school has dealt with physical or sexual violence in a dating relationship. That blows my mind how common it is. And because it's that common, I think it's definitely something we should look at and understand better. Okay, I paused it.
By the way, thank you. Why are you talking to her? I just asked for the time. That's what you have to talk to other girls. Please, you do something. Always trying me. Bro, I asked her for the time, and you always playing, bro. Stop. You always doing too much. That's what I'm talking about, bro. Stop talking to other girls. I'm the only one you need to talk to. None of your business. What I tell you about that? What is wrong with you? That's what I'm talking about. You always on me. You had a good time? Yeah. We're gonna do that again next weekend.
Oh shit! Who is that?
My boy. I mean, I don't know. I think it's a random number.
Okay. Yeah. So.
You have fun?
Yeah. Wait. Hold on. Are you serious right now?
This is my cousin.
Are you real serious right now?
My cousin.
I've never met this cousin before.
She my cousin. She flew in.
Oh, she your cousin.
Yes.
She your cousin. I'm pretty sure I met all your family. Don't for me.
Stop. People looking. That's my cousin. What the fuck? Please. Look at that nigga. What's your face?
Man, that was really deep, wasn't it? Like so many times people could say like I want to understand what this thing is, domestic violence and how does stuff like this happen? I would say that for some people it starts when you're in high school. Literally that first little love that you have and you start learning sort of the rules if you would about relationships and it gets a little morphed because you're dealing with someone who's using power and control and you think that is an explanation or an expression of love when in fact it's an expression of control. So today we're going to talk about some red flags for teenage dating relationships. Let me tell you, I feel so inadequate in some ways to give this talk because I don't even know that I was a late bloomer in the sense of life because I hit puberty like a bullet and my glasses filled. Yes, thank you. I hit puberty like a bullet as far as my body. I was, having everything that you sort of need for people to think you're grown. But I did not experience really dating in high school. I had like some puppy loves and maybe I had a date or so, but nothing where I was in a relationship. As many of you all may have experienced already, a lot, especially people in the South, they say it is like they allowed their child to date at 16. And even now I laugh because I have no children, but I've met some 16-year-olds and sometimes I'm like, they don't need to be dating anybody. But even at 16, I didn't really experience a dating relationship. So when I look at students who are like, I'm in a dating relationship or they say that they're in love, I sort of like go, wow, because I didn't have to experience, or should I say, I didn't get to experience that sense of ownership of someone or a relationship where like, oh, what I do affects you and what you do affects me until like college and in large part really like law school and beyond because I was really into like I out of here. I don't want to be a teen pregnant statistic and, focusing that way. But what we know is that as parents often try, no matter how, to have us avoid these young people have their own desires. They are piqued sexually. Their desires and attractions are evident. And so I think that one of the things that even my mother said later on in life, that she wished she would have encouraged me to date in high school, because I started dating outside of her home. So she didn't get to observe whether I was doing it well or wrong. So one thing I do encourage in this whole discussion is that parents are not afraid, and they're not made to run to the hills if they're little, 16-year-old expressing curiosity, or 13-year-old in the boy down the street. But it's to allow them an opportunity to just learn how to have positive relationships with people of the opposite sex. And I guess nowadays I need to say with people that they may be attracted to, okay? Because we do know that there are same-sex attraction. Or as one kid told me in Cobb County, Georgia, that it was so popular, she's a girl, it was so popular that almost everybody she knew that was a girl had a girlfriend and a boyfriend, regardless of whether or not they really were attracted to him. That was popular. And that was a few years ago. So God knows what's happening now. But parents, if you let them connect while you are there, you're able to observe and give positive feedback back as to what's acceptable and what's not. All those things, including, the dad taking the girl out and showing her all these things, how a man should treat you, all those things are wonderful. But there's nothing like, the affirmation of someone of the opposite sex that you're attracted to in young ages, because your dad loves you and your mom loves you. So it's quite all right to have give an opportunity for that person to experience love and attention from someone else. Okay, so we're going to talk about I'm feeling like Wendy Williams right now, because I see that what is happening? Okay, I just saw that my computer's about to die, and I was like, what's that about? Okay, so let's talk about what even dating violence is. Now, I am focusing on teens today, but really, almost like a teen love romance, all of us can learn from this particular lesson, because the truth of it is, there's really no rules in dating. Literally. I mean, there are no rules whatsoever. So I wanted to start off with at least a foundational understanding of what rules are. And I just want to say, guys, if you want to share any questions or comments, please put them in the comment box below, whether you watch live or on a replay. Please, please, please share those questions and comments. We really appreciate it. So let's get to dating violence or dating abuse. Dating abuse or dating violence dating abuse or dating violence is the perpetuation or perpetration I'm tired. Perpetration or threat of an act of violence by at least one member of an unmarried couple on the other member in the context of dating and courtship. So I know, especially with Domestic Violence Month, sometimes people call it Intimate Partnership Violence Month. Well, intimate partners can be married or unmarried. This is particularly focused on people who are not acting as a married couple or acting as a family, right? And that's why I want to deal with it, particularly with young adults and teens, because usually at those ages, you're not cohabitating. There's no question that you all are not acting as a familiar force. And so I thought this would be a more neat way of discussing the issue of dating, because the things that are good for the young people is also good for the older people. But I think it's more dire for the young people to understand early what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Okay. Now, in the state of Florida, understand that you can get different things like restraining orders for dating violence, but this is the kind of dating violence that it helps protect against. Dating violence is a violence between individuals who have or had a continuing and significant relationship of a romantic or intimate nature. You can get a legal intervention by TPO, which is a temporary protective order, only if that relationship has been within 6 months. I note that because that's the kind of law I practice, getting restraining orders, also known as injunctions. And so this particular violence is the same kind of violence you may find in a regular domestic violence situation: harassment, assault, battery, false imprisonment, um, intimidation. All those things are under dating violence. Dating violence as well. But what's different than in domestic violence is that in the state of Florida, at least, if there's an incident that you're both raising because you want a civil injunction or restraining order, it needs to have happened within 6 months of the relationship. So you can't sort of like have been with someone, y'all dated, and then 2 years later they're harassing you. That's no longer dating violence. That could be stalking or something else. So I just note that because most of the injunctions have very little when it comes to just how the duration of a particular activity, but the relationship had to be within the last 6 months. Now, what I think is most important, as you seeing all of this domestic violence, sexual violence, abuse is about power and control. Now, let me ask you, you ain't paying no bills. You can barely pay for lunch. And that's at school, which is probably less than $5. How on earth can any person feel that they have the right or the opportunity to put their hands on you? And maybe that is the wrong question, because that sounds like it's victim blaming. Because I don't care if you're paying for all the bills, you don't have a right to put your hands on someone. But I was really amazed to see the statistic was 1 out of every 3 teens are facing physical or have faced physical or sexual battery, assault, violence within a dating relationship. Because I'm like, I barely should be kissing you, hopefully. In high school, where do you get off telling me what I can and cannot do? But then that's me. But here we have it in today's age. It happens all the time. And so you may, like me, you're like, well, what are the red flags? What's really interesting is that you see a lot of the same red flags with adults. So if you're an adult and you're just listening on and you're like, oh, I may need to hear this too. Yes, you may need to hear this too. I'm talking about red flags in teenage relationships, but there's red flags even if you're not a teen. And you know, there was a article, and I would really encourage you guys, especially parents, to maybe check it out. It's in the it's teendvmonth.org. Teendvmonth.org. There's a great article, and in it basically talks about how, because teenagers are in fact trying to figure out life, right? They're in the development stages, that their relationships are most likely riddled with different problems, because often they're so immature, and it requires more maturity than most teens have developed in order to really have a steady, consistent relationships. And these problems that they're were riddled with deal with the lack of communication, jealousy, selfishness. All that stuff happens in adulthood too. But having a 25-year-old deal with it may come off a little bit different than a 13-year-old trying to deal with a myriad of all these emotions and their hormones. So as a result, teenagers are more likely to be involved in relationships that are unhealthy, violent, or abusive. More likely, it doesn't say that they are, but they're more vulnerable to it because they're younger. And if you're a teenager that's involved in some type of romantic relationship, it is really important to understand the behaviors that may point to an unhealthy or an abusive relationship. So that's what we're going to be talking about, some red flags. So mom, dad, take out a pen and paper, and anybody actually who's in the dating scene, you may want to be looking at your own relationship, because we're trying to protect kids who we feel are not yet mature in understanding maybe how relationships work. And people do not be surprised. This is not just happening with kids who didn't have a father or kids who grew up in violence. That there's a lot, whether it's television, our music, or video games. There's so many bad examples out there of interaction and physical violence being used between the sexes and in relationships, that you can find people acting out things that they never were modeled in their homes, but they're acting it out because they are lacking information sometimes, or maybe there may be an underlying problem mentally or emotionally that they need help with. So let's look at it. And to all the fathers out there, you're welcome. Red flags in teenage relationships. So if you see this in your teens' relationships, their little play boyfriend, and they don't have to be officially boyfriend, girlfriend, because I know a lot of times nowadays the hookup culture, even as young as 12 years old, they often wait forever before anyone's called a boyfriend or girlfriend, right? So this could be any relationship, particularly one in which they have some type of intimacy, some type of romance, or even physical affection. So red flags towards possible violence, and again, abuse. And what do we say? Abuse is about power and control. So sometimes we can't ignore things that are not physical because we think, well, okay, it has to be physical and violent in a physical way to be abused, but exerting power and control over someone is abuse. All right. So red flags. Excessive jealousy or insecurity. Now, children are easily dealing with insecurity, right? They don't know yet how to dress. They don't often are like still wondering from their friends' point of view every day, what do they have on? Does it look great? But when someone is so excessively jealous, they're excessively jealous. They're jealous about the male cousins they have. They just deal with excessive jealousy. You see your child involved with someone like that, or you see your child is acting like that, that's a red flag. And when I say red flag, isn't that like when there's a penalty on the play, you stop and you correct, whether that's in conversation. Hopefully it's an opportunity for the child to learn because they're still children. So this is not to suggest that someone is all of a sudden a wife beater because they're excessively jealous at 12 years old or 14 years old, but it's flag on the play. You need to have some conversation. If it's your child, definitely deal with them deep. If it's someone else's child who's in a relationship with yours, I still say they're still children. You step in and you watch, right? Invasion of your privacy. Invasions of your privacy. As a parent, you're paying the cell phone bill, you have a right to put a GPS tracking system on your child's phone. The girlfriend does not have a right to be tracking the boyfriend. Now, maybe people think like, oh, it's innocent, but I consider that invasion of privacy. The idea that both will need to check, or that one person in the relationship is like, I need to check your cell phone messages and have access to your emails, or I need to know these things. These are invasions of privacy. And as young people, I think it's really great to show them like, here's borders and boundaries, that there's certain things that are private. No matter how much you care about someone, you don't allow them into that space. Unexpected bouts of anger or rage. Again, this is not to say that someone's going to be a hardened wife beater, but if you see this in your child or someone else, unexpected, right? They're 16-year-old and their car gets crushed. If they're upset about it, that's not unexpected. What may be unexpected is after a wonderful day at a football game and they have victory, and you see them coming over and he's angry about something. And your child expressed, I don't even know, some guy, I don't even know why he would be so angry. That's a red flag on the play. You need to get in there and you need to deal with it, because it could be a sign that someone may be too immature to be in a safe relationship with your child. Unusual moodiness. Now, this is a little difficult because, what teenager is not moody, but unusual moody? I would put this with the unexpected bouts of anger as sort of like a totality of circumstances that you really should look out for that. And look out for It may not be the person who's being the aggressive person. It may be the person who's more kicked back in the relationship, that they're finding themselves unsure of what's happening, so they don't know that day if they're happy until they see their girlfriend. If she's happy, okay, I'm happy. If their mood seems to be set by the person they're in a relationship with. Pressuring a partner into unwanted sexual activity. Ding, ding, ding. Now, that's statistics. 1 out of every 3 teenage high school students has experienced sexual or physical violence. I imagine that number is sort of high in some respects, because I suggest that most kids in a romantic entanglement, let me say, is probably dealt with sexual pressure, whether it's oral sex, intercourse, touching, fondling, that they have felt in some ways pressured. And because it's about power control, when they don't have that power, or they become disempowered and they lose their control and someone else takes it, that is a violent act. And I want to say, we have to look out for our kids. So this is not just if they're the guy that took your daughter out for homecoming. It may be the girlfriend who is chilling and hanging over, and you think they're just friends, but really they may have some type of attraction to each other, and that girlfriend may be totally inordinately trying to control everything her girlfriend does. I've seen it happen. And let me tell you, as parents, you don't have to wait till you have proof or believe that there's some sexual intercourse has happened or sex at all. But you also, as parents, can say and observe and deal with the idea that you believe there's violence or abuse going on, and you can file a restraining order against whatever your child's partner is. Pressuring a partner into unwanted sexual activity. Unfortunately, I even know of a situation where girl and guy friends for years, and the guy took advantage, and she did not want and had never experienced with that person before any sexual activity, and the guy took advantage and totally assaulted her sexually and created so much confusion, because this teenager was like, this is my friend. Did I do something? Or maybe because she was flattered that he liked her, that the touches went too far. You all, that situation, there was no romance, and that was a person that had been friends for years, no issue. What was an issue then? Parents, be on the lookout. Ask your kids, how are they doing? If they're feeling pressured, what is going on? But again, you have to know how to talk to your kids, because if you ask the wrong, not the wrong thing, but at the wrong time with more of a conclusion, a judgment, they most likely won't talk to you. But hopefully, as they are learning in their relationships, you're learning how to best help, coach them along. Blaming you for problems in the relationship and not taking any responsibility for the same. Hello, this is great advice for all of us. If you find that your child is always being blamed in a relationship and the other person never seems to take responsibility. Earlier we saw Gabby Petito, although she was 22 years old, I believe, she got pulled over in the van with her boyfriend, and she was crying, and she took all the blame. And he took none. Now, unfortunately, that resulted in, we believe, somehow that Gabby was left vulnerable and she ended up dying. And we don't know why, but watch that. See if your child is always blaming themselves, and it never seems the other person ever participates in taking responsibility. Yeah. So, my throat is super dry. Watch out for controlling tendencies. Now, this can be very slight. And again, there's a lot of people who are controlling who are not abusive or violent, but taken to the end, it could be. My mother, who used to love guarding over what I ate, especially younger, she was concerned about my weight. She had every right to be, but sometimes she just went overboard. she noticed that someone I was dating, we were out to dinner with my family, and like I went to go get a roll and they tapped my hand. I thought about going to get a second plate and they tapped my hand. Um, and I knew what he was doing, but I didn't even realize that anybody else would have recognized what he was doing. And it wasn't like a signal that we had worked out, but I knew instinctively that he was telling me not to get anything else. And my mother got upset. And I was laughing like, Mama, you would just say don't eat no more rolls. But what she didn't like was like it was a controlling tendency. And you ain't paying no bills up in here. And I see that my daughter is, that my daughter is being controlled by her boyfriend about what she can wear and what she can do. And this control, check that. Red flag on the play. You need to have a conversation, not just with her, but him. And it's not so much that boyfriend, and I'm using that example a lot, that boyfriend may have some really good sort of standards where he's like, oh, she needs to look more modest. But is it his job to control what she wears? That's the question. And we have to make sure that we're modeling out to our children that at points there's suggestions, but that's different than control. Explosive tempers. I think for most of us, if we saw our child with their partner or their so-called little boyfriend, or saw our son with a girlfriend, if she had an explosive temper, we're like, get it together. Often these explosive tempers happen out of the ear and eye shot of parents, but check in with your child, know how to talk to them. And when they may first say something that suggests an explosive temper, I would watch how you respond, because their first instinct will probably be to protect the person. You need to find out information. So it's like, oh, okay. Y'all were at the drive-in. He screamed at you. How did that make you feel? Has he screamed like that before? Anybody else ever been around when he screamed like that? So you said he screamed. Did it sound like when me and your dad disagree? Oh, it does. And it scared you. Okay, me and your dad shouldn't be screaming at each other. But like, have a conversation so that your child would feel like they can tell you, and you, again, red flag on the play. Is this person dealing with just a momentary lapse because of something extraordinary, or they're always exploding on your child? Another red flag, the person preventing you from going out with or talking to other people. Again, I always laugh. You ain't paying no bills up in here. So how is my son's girlfriend telling him he can't go to this party, he can't do this? You don't control nothing up in here. You are young. The one thing I love to tell young people is that don't worry about having a best friend or a boyfriend at this age. And just understand that you are free. No need to start playing house or acting like an old wife or old husband. So don't let people tell you where you can go and who you can be around, and you can't talk to her and you can't talk to him. It's controlling. And at a young age, I think in particular, that maturing and understanding, even as adults, you can't control who people deal with. Now, I do know, like, wait a minute, what if, I have a son and he knows that there's this guy who likes his girlfriend or disrespects her or whatever. He's like, watch out for him. Don't talk to him. That sounds suggestive at best and protective, but you still, as a parent, should watch out for those conversations, to listen to your child says, well, so-and-so say I can't talk to so-and-so. My mother, even just between girlfriends, she would tell me, no one of my friends could tell me I can't be friends with someone else. If they do that, is about control. And that was romantic at all. So I think it's very important to empower our children. And a red flag is when they're trying to prevent people from prevent their person from being around other people. Constantly monitoring your whereabouts and checking in to see what you're doing and who you are with. Come on now, you ain't paying no bills up in here. This is very, 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 very important as a red flag in teenage relationships. Why? Because so many kids are so addicted to that shit. They just so addicted. They just, wherever they go, many of them, they're posting where they are, what they're doing, what they're eating, to the point that it may not even seem like control. But when the person in a relationship seems to always be checking in, always getting a call, that may be a red flag for you to address. I'm embarrassed to say it. I have experienced this, and I do think it goes into mental abuse almost. Especially if people are narcissistic, and it's a whole nother conversation. But I remember having someone in my life who was so controlling that I felt like I had to always appease him and to reiterate how faithful I was to him. And not just that, but if I went away on vacation, I found myself like literally like, oh, look, I'm at the beach. And then I turn around and show him everyone else is around me. And one of the unspoken things was like, it better not be no guys around you. And sometimes it wasn't unspoken, and I was a grown woman. I could imagine in high school, as often as people on social media, how they may not have a GPS on your child's phone, but they may call, say, where are you? Okay, FaceTime me because I want to see. That's not healthy. It wasn't healthy for me as a grown woman. It's not healthy for our kids. Also, a red flag to possibly dating violence or trouble or unhealthy creation of a teen relationship is being falsely accused of things. So unfortunately, sometimes people get into a habit and they feel almost every time they're in order to get attention, they just start making up stuff and accusing the person in a relationship with, maybe because they saw it modeled in their relationship, but it's not cool. Someone's always accusing you of something. That's a red flag in general, romantic or not, because what is about you? What is it about that person that makes them feel like they have to either get attention or seek power and control by lies? That's dangerous. Taunting or bullying. Yes, you could be in a relationship and being taunted and bullied by the person you're in a relationship with. It's easy to say love doesn't hurt. But sometimes people don't even understand the name calling, even if it comes from, a childish place, like my boo boo, but it humiliates you, you hate it. That's taunting. Bullying makes a person feel disempowered. And so it may not come in a way that you would look at like the big school bully, but it could be like, oh, you can't do nothing without me because you're clumsy, and you're clumsy. Oops. And every time you get up, you're like, oops, you're going to drop that. That's a form of bullying. It may not be the most divisive type of bullying, but it's problematic. Again, this is not to say that a person is Charles Manson, but it's a red flag on the play, right? So you have to investigate and let's talk about that. Like, it's okay to say, I don't like it. Don't call me this. Oh, I call all my friends that. Well, I'm not your friend like that. I'm your girlfriend, and you need to honor me. And I think it's great to teach children this as they continue to try to figure out this adult world and consider dating. I think this is the last one. And I think this is the most obvious. Threatening or causing physical evidence. You know what? I don't care if it's made like a joke. I should knock you in the face. I feel like coming through that phone. I knock the fire out of you. That's not funny. Why are you saying that to my child? I should stab you. Of course, usually when it's less funny sounding, that kind of threat or actual physical violence happens off sight, right? Out of earshot. Notice if your child continues to seem to have a bruise or says something hurts. You notice that person's neck, their arms. Notice if they look like they're trying to hide something. Now, they could be trying to hide a hickey, right? But they also could be trying to hide finger marks. So you have to be aware enough about your child to know what may be happening. Or if they're like saying, I don't want to talk to someone, it may be less about their feelings being hurt. Maybe they're actually afraid. And I suggest this even for the strongest children because I recognize that sometimes it is the strongest children, the popular ones, the ones that have everybody sort of ooh and ah over their relationships. Do you know there are parents who ooh and ah over people's relationships that will cause someone to be like, well, everyone thinks we're the perfect couple. Those are the children you probably even need to check on more, right? More. And like I said, because, we're 90s and 80s babies, many of our parents. Now we got more millennials up and more Z's, and, they're not parents yet, hopefully. But, people don't often group in couples the way we were used to it. So I'm saying stop dating violence amongst the young people. But it may just be those two who really, really like each other and hang out all the time. What are they doing? It could be literally some type of intimate, sexual, affectionate relationship that also can explode in different ways. And I guess it doesn't matter as much if it's dating, whatever that relationship violence could be yielding, you got to put it into it and you got to be open to it, even if it doesn't look like what you thought. You have two girls that are best friends slapping each other and fighting. Hey, that could be dating violence, but it's a relationship that has violence, and that is not okay. And we need to model that out. Now, below I have locally, Taylor County, where most of my viewers are watching, Refuge House hotline 850-584-8808. Toll-free number 888-956-7273. I do work in victim advocacy and getting injunctions for domestic violence, sexual violence, dating violence, and stalking. Here is my email address, and I help people from Jefferson, Madison, Taylor County. I have and will refer people in other places, and this is in Big Bend, North Florida. But I am available to help because I know that this is a very hard situation. If you're dealing with these different types of, I call it intimate, scary things that many people don't not want to deal with, it's hard to often get help. But I want to help you. And I hope that as we complete our time, next week I'm talking about stalking. And actually, it's going to be pretty intimate because I'm going to share with you a true story that involves me, that I'm actually not only intimately aware of, unfortunately, I'm the subject matter of a stalker who continues shenanigans and out and has been since 2015. So this Stoptober month means a lot to me because many times you never think it's going to be you, and if it's you, then you try to think about those situations and circumstances that would happen. Know that it happens, and then know that there's help. And we say stop this. I know that one of the first ways you can stop anything is become aware of it. So these, that's why with my storyboarding of this on my Facebook, and the post is not accompanied by music. I don't make light of it. I'm not dancing at the beginning of the show. It's because this is serious. These are scary things that make us frightened at night, much scarier than the haunted house and Halloween. But it's things that are often hard to talk about and get our heads and minds around it. So I'm hoping in the minutes every Wednesday that we're talking about different aspects of being a victim of certain violence, that we can stop it by first becoming aware and then looking out for those who may not feel empowered to do anything about it, or maybe even unaware that it's happening around them. So thank you for watching. This is Hope Dims. This is Wednesday. I hope you've had a great Wednesday, that you've had a great Hope Day, because we don't do humps around here. And if you have a child or you have someone you love and you want more information about particularly teen dating violence, I suggest that you go to teendvmonth.org. Actually, Teen Dating Violence Month is February, so you have some time. There are also participation in contests like the video we saw at the beginning, like where they get kids involved to really tell their stories, right? Because they know and they're more connected to what's happening with them than often adults are because it's their culture. But if that's you even who needs some help, go to teendvmonth.org. It's a really great resource, and I'm sure you will find information there that can help. So I want to say have a wonderful Wednesday night. I love you, and I'll see you next week as we talk about stop stalking. And and I'm gonna have someone else asking the question since I'll be the survivor or the person speaking on my own stalking experience. And who knows, maybe you guys can help me because we're still trying to find the person who's behind the issues of my stalking case this year. All right, then. So God bless you. Goodbye. And I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much, Shandria. Yes, coerced, but not consenting. Thank you for that comment. Many times, our kids, especially with sexual violence, they're not consenting, they're being coerced. Thank you, Shandria, for supporting. Thank you all for watching live or on the replay. God bless.